Good morning. It's Thursday, December 4th, 2014. This is Tech Talk Today, episode 101, the hangover edition from episode 100. And as appropriate, I'm all alone here in the studio, but I'm actually joined by a great group on our Mumble server. Hey there, time-appropriate greetings, Mumble Room.
Time-appropriate greetings.
Yo.
Hello. Hi,
With
guys.
us, you are never alone.
I know. You're
We're a
always
good
here.
influence, though.
That or you're just voices in my head. This is like Fight Club. But if it was, we couldn't talk about it. So there was a
Well,
story.
then we shouldn't talk about it.
No, we can't. No, it's in the first rule. There's a story I want to talk about, though, and it came up yesterday, and I was like, oh, yeah, I meant to put this in the show. So I wanted to cover it right up at the top because I meant to cover it yesterday. And it was thanks to the Tech Talk Today subreddit that this got back up in my face organ, and I was able to put it in the show. So Intel has been working with Stephen Hawking on his voice system, but it's actually not just his voice system. The headline says voice system, but it's actually the whole computer interaction system, and Intel's planning to make some of the code open source. They reinvented the speech and text communication systems used by Professor Hawking, and they plan to release that software as open source in 2015. The Assistive Context-Aware Toolkit has helped double Hawking's speech and text input times and makes it up to 10 times faster for him to open files, switch between applications, and browse the web. Hawking said at an event that he and the Intel developments these Intel developments, have been life-changing for him. But here is the funny thing this is what threw me. With all of the improvements Intel's done, made it 10 times faster, made it easier to browse files, this throws me for a loop. But it's actually kind of understandable if you think about it. In fact, he insisted upon this, that they not change the way the voice sound. He was actually adamant about this, they say, that his voice is his voice, and they didn't want it changed, which, if you've heard it before, it's very robotic because it was very early speech technology. So even with all of the other improvements and all of the stuff they're going to open source, that was an aspect that they didn't want to change. And there is also, one of the companies involved with Intel was, you probably heard of them, SwiftKey, the Android and iOS keyboard maker. They worked to make some interface changes for Stephen. And I don't know if that's going to be open source code, but that's something to keep an eye out for as well.
How frustrating that if he blue screens, he can't even swear.
Right. Although, you know what? You think about it, it gives him time to really articulate a really great swear when it does come back online, because then he's probably got a whole sentence or two ready to go.
That's good.
Yeah. I just thought that was a really neat story, and you have to figure if these companies obviously will bend over backwards to try to work with an iconic figure like Stephen Hawking, but because that code is going to be open source, your average Joe could benefit from it as well. And that's the part I really liked about it, and I thought Intel deserved a good guy for that. And we'll have more information in the show notes if this is a story that interests you more. Okay. Go ahead, guys.
I agree 100%.
So what did we think about this next story? Not surprising, I think, if you've been watching Google over 2014, but it is official. Google is planning to launch kid-friendly versions of Chrome, YouTube, and other Google services in 2015. They say they're currently working on these products, specifically tailored for the kids under the age of 13. This was dug up in a report for USA Today, and it quotes some tidbits of information from VP of Engineering at Google. Pavani, I think is how you say his first name. He says the new products are due at some point next year, and they're intended to help children be more than just pure consumers of tech, but creators too. It's not clear how products designed for kids under 13 would actually work, but there's some hints that it may change the way they look and perhaps the kinds of data that they present. And the Ars Technica article does a little speculation in here saying that, perhaps if you searched for trains into Google, right, well, perhaps the kid would be expecting Thomas the Tank Engine, but instead, right now, Google would send you back the Amtrak schedule. So they would change those kinds of displayed results to be more tailored to perhaps what kids would be looking for. Now, you might be scratching your head right now, because if you're familiar with some of the recent U.S. laws, one of the biggest considerations when designing any online service for kids is the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, or COPPA is what the hipsters call it. It dictates how information can be collected from and presented to kids under the age of 13. Changes to the law effective of July in 2013 include multiple stipulations related to privacy policies, parental oversight, and security requirements for data collected from young children. Not exactly Google's strong suit when it comes to advertising. We have to keep in mind the vast majority of Google's revenue comes from advertising, and the value of the company's ads is tied towards the trove of data that they have on the user. COPPA compliance would obviously be an important thing for Google to have a quote-unquote service under the age of 13, but it would mean changing what they store. And if you recall, Yelp was fined $450,000 earlier this year for some minor COPPA violations. So it's a serious thing.
I think it's what accountants call an intangible. You have to subtract the advertising dollars for the intangible brainwashing and lock-in and all those other great RMS terms.
The long-term platform benefit is that you have lifelong users, right? Probably the same reason why Apple would sell. Apple doesn't discount anything, but they were famous for discounting Macintoshes for schools, especially when I was in school. They were really aggressive about giving steep discounts to schools to get kids in front of Macs. And now we see Microsoft doing the same thing, right? Microsoft will give licenses away and training material. It's essentially Google's version of that, perhaps.
We had Apple IIs in my school.
Do we trust that Google will truly, really be respectful of children's private information? Like, will they have when a child turns 18 and they become a legal adult in the U.S., will they then start anew with an entirely blank slate on Google's records, or will there be 10 or plus years of history there, of maybe minor signals that they were able to collect? What is the line? And I wish that was made very clear. I wish that was something that, as end users, we had a better grasp on.
I still have to interact as parents with it to make sure what's going on, because ultimately you can't expect your child to be responsible for that or understand the concept at such an early age. And I wonder if this would be more interactive, because I think something like that would help them not be so much consumers as interacting with what they're doing, or throw them to an activity to make them more mindful of what they're doing online.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think in some ways it's good to have a company of Google's size that is willing to take this challenge or risk on. Like in the case of Jupiter Broadcasting, we have this mumble room, and Blaster's rightfully reminding me right now, we have a policy of you have to be 13 years or older to use the mumble server because of COPPA. And it's just not an area that is even, like, we don't even want to mess with it. And so a lot of companies just, what they do is the back doorway in, right? They, parents or kids lie about the age. I've seen this happen to get kids on Xbox Live. I've seen, family members.
Facebook.
What's that?
Facebook as well.
Yes, exactly. I've seen family members that I'm like, what do you mean you have a Facebook account, right? And so it's already happening, and there's no protections because they're lying to the system. So at least in this, there's the downsides of locking them into the platform, as RMS would say, and that is majorly concerning. But there are also the benefits of having access to technology, which is always a good thing, and also the fact that these at least will be it'll be above board. And I think that's maybe actually a pretty important thing. I don't know if I want my kids, I'm not big on it, but if my kids were going to use internet services, I'd want the service to know what their age is, so that way COPPA and other things too. Like I also kind of agree with the changing the search results. I still think it's too easy to fall backwards into boobs on Google Images. Like I still continue to see boobs when I don't mind, really, but I could see how some parents would mind, and it still happens way too easily. So if they could, change things like Thomas the Tank and boobs, well then, maybe it's worth it. Even if it does mean creating future Google zombies. I'm not sure about that last part, but I'm thinking about it. Any closing thoughts on that mumble room?
The trade-off is very questionable. It's just like, yeah. It's a slippery slope and a very fine line. Yeah, I think. I've said it 100 times. I don't mean to be a broken record. I think what we used to think of as lock-in in the past was very file-based. We thought of .docs and we thought .xls. We thought of that kind of lock-in. That is such a minor version of lock-in compared to what we are facing in the future. We've just talked about the kind of lock-in that companies like Google and Apple and Amazon want. But there's other companies, cloud services out there that also want to kind of get this platform lock-in. Dropbox is our next story. Dropbox has announced an API for third parties wishing to develop and integrate apps that work into Dropbox for specifically business applications.
The move is designed to appeal to office users and proprietary systems and vendors who need a cloud function component that they don't need to roll themselves. The API has launched with 20 partners, including Microsoft and IBM. It's going to allow for Dropbox for Business apps to use some more advanced features that's not available to the free service or to regular developers. It's also going to integrate with existing enterprise security and auditing systems, so people that have systems in place for businesses that audit logins and file access events will be able to take advantage of that. Now, I think a lot of us, when we think of Dropbox, probably do not think of the best security model. We know they have one shared encryption key, master key. We know that Condoleezza Rice is on the board of Dropbox. But they say, in an interview, George O'Brien said, Dropbox for Business is a security-first product. We encrypt data as it travels through the API. Okay. Only a Dropbox for Business system administrator can install a Dropbox for Business API app. We're very aggressive about who has control over the API and who has access to it. Well, I would hope you have control of the API. So that sounded like a lot of business speak for Dropbox is trying to pretend like they're super secure and they get it.
If they have a master key, then they're full of crap.
Yeah, I just don't think Dropbox is the scale of company that's ready for enterprise-grade storage. I would trust this to Microsoft and OneDrive and Azure before I trusted to Dropbox for another 5-10 years. They're just still, in my opinion, I could be way wrong, but in my opinion, I think they're just still too much of a startup to be considered a serious, platform-level storage backend for enterprise-grade applications. But you got to start somewhere, and it is. Go ahead.
I kind of disagree with that because they are the pioneers when it comes to the cloud storage technology in terms of
like the sync
making
stuff
it readily available for people.
Yeah, and you know what? They also, just to play off your point, they really led the pack on making their Dropbox storage really easy to integrate into apps on mobile when mobile devices were really a pain in the, well, they still kind of are a pain in the butt to get files on and off of.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, the fact that a lot of companies are, sorry about my son, a lot of companies are using Dropbox for their everyday storage needs, for their enterprise storage needs. So I mean, it's already happening. It's just a matter of integrating it further.
Right. Well, here's what to play off that
point. That's unfortunate though, because people, Dropbox for a long time has always said don't use us for storage. We're a syncing service.
Yeah,
because if you could lose your files, they'll delete your files without your interaction whatsoever. And there's some cases where if you don't actually open or touch a file within 30 days, they'll delete it, and you'll have no option to get it ever again.
Well, I've had Dropbox for quite a while, never had anything deleted, but I've
had a couple things.
I have had other issues. I've had issues where they had one client update and something freaked out and it duplicated and made everything a conflicted file, and it added in parentheses conflict in the file name, and it duplicated my Dropbox. I've had things like that happen. But I think the reality is, at least what I saw when I was on my way out of client services in IT was I was seeing a surprising amount of end users that were able to install Dropbox on their own and were using Dropbox interdepartmentally just to share with each other, or like they'd go home and work and they needed to work at home and they didn't want to do thumb drives. And so Dropbox seemed to be one of those bring your own techs that was sort of just materializing in IT. And, some networks were tamping it down, some networks would block it, but it was already happening. So this also could be sort of Dropbox giving enterprises a more legit way to implement this. Because if you can snap it into your existing auditing infrastructure, well, there's some perks to that there. And if it's already something your users are familiar with, well, now you've given them a path to do it legitimately. So I think this is how the service will start. That's how it'll begin to roll. But then it's going to be baked into more and more applications where when you hit file save, you're going to have your local hard drive and then you're going to have Dropbox, right? And it's going to be like just a layered file system that's available on all your systems. That's their hope, at least. But it's going to be a super, great form of lock-in when the applications only support Dropbox. Platform lock-in. Welcome to the new century, everybody. Hey, one last story to go. We sometimes have, it's not really our fault, but Samsung's had a lot of bad news lately. A lot of bad news out of Samsung. So I thought, let's wrap up with a good news Samsung story. Some news from Linux.com. Samsung's open source group is growing and they're hiring, which I always love to hear. Almost 2 years ago, Samsung's open source team was just one person. That's not bad, though. They say the new open source innovation group at Samsung now is 40 people strong, including 30 developers devoted to full-time working on upstream projects. I don't know which, but they say upstream projects. The group is hiring aggressively and plans to double the size of the group in the coming years. Their first targets are project maintainers and key contributors to 23 open source projects. Here we go. We got some names. I didn't read ahead. Including the Linux kernel. That makes sense. GStreamer. Hey-o! That's interesting. They say that these are integral to Samsung's products, these particular projects. FFmpeg. Okay. Blink and WebKit. EFL and Wayland. How about that? You know what? Those are all projects I like a lot, and I love that Samsung's putting some wood behind that arrow. They plan to eventually start hiring more junior open source developers as well. Just about every Samsung product, from phones and tablets to home appliances, uses open source software. This would make a great runs Linux. This was according to Guy Martin, the senior open source strategist at Samsung. Martin also mentioned the importance of funding. You already see this in the Linux kernel, he says, where most people who contribute are paid to contribute, and you'll see that more and more for the other projects. Wayland, FFmpeg, Blink, WebKit, and the Linux kernel and GStreamer are all going to get some of that Samsung money. Huh? Hey, look at this. They have a video about it. Well, we should watch this, and then we'll talk about it. So this is, they have like a Samsung open source video. I don't know if this is new or not, but let's check it out, see what we get. How is Samsung evolving into an open source company?
I was first introduced to Linux in 1994. And then my whole career since then, professional career, was built on open source, and working in different companies. So when Samsung approached me for starting the open source group, I really thought there was a really big opportunity there.
So this is the head of the Samsung Open Source Innovations Lab, it said.
To create a success story.
So the Open Source Software Group at Samsung is a group of about 40 people total, of which 20 some odd are developers. And really the charter of the group is to help develop leadership inside of Samsung in the open source space. Samsung was tinkering with open source back in 2001, right? Just sort of nibbling around the edges, if you will, of the open source community. We've come to a point now where it's, again, key and important in pretty much every product we build.
In the past year and a half, we've focused a lot on upstream development, just as a core unit, not just as Samsung as a whole, just our team. So our time is devoted on 50% upstream, guaranteed, and the other 50% is divided into helping different product and R&D teams.
So we've got
Wow. So he says 50% of their time is devoted, guaranteed, to working on upstream products.
That's amazing.
That is extreme. This is definitely a good guy Samsung story, isn't it? Hey, Libby Clark, who wrote this for Linux.com, you should totally embed that video at the top of the article. And maybe instead of the crappy stock photos of Samsung's products, put your great custom YouTube video up there and put that crappy stock product down at the bottom. And then more people will watch your video. That's a little broadcaster tip. That is a great write-up, though. And I love that Samsung's recognizing that it's important to have paid people dedicated to working on these projects.
I feel a lot better now because I was setting up a Samsung LCD panel with a media player the other day, and I'm going through the menus, and I stumbled on antivirus.
Oh.
And I just got really depressed and frightened. Antivirus on your TV? Ugh.
Yeah. There is it's funny. Our end commercial is sort of like the first stab at the really smart TV, and I didn't actually pick it at first because of this story, but it really ties in together with this story. Is we are at a whole nother generation now of these really crazy smart TVs, and I just don't want it. I mean, I just don't really want that. I wanted just a nice display that just has, maybe 4, 5, 6. You know what? Save on the little embedded computer and the R&D on developing the UI, and splurge on a few more HDMI ports, and I'm happy. And so that's when you say that, like that makes me cringe a little bit.
Well, it makes this maybe some conspiracy bacon material, but it looks like all the manufacturers are trying to adopt the Apple model and be content providers.
Yeah.
So don't look at it as a TV anymore. Look at it as like an iPhone or iPad, which is an opportunity to purchase Apple software.
Right, and it's and I can kind of understand in a way, because if there is a set of people like that probably legitimately want a TV that has a Netflix button on the remote, and they push it and they don't have to have anything else plugged in. Like, that is a nice to have. So the idea of trying to build that for consumers, I don't necessarily want to crap on it, because in theory, if you put a decent enough processor in there, maybe like something that's as powerful as what's in the Amazon Fire, and you put a light software stack on there, you should be able to deliver fairly well-performant applications like Netflix and Hulu, etc. And I don't really have a problem with that. It's what they end up shipping that I have a problem with. So, and you know what? Maybe to that point, if you have a smart TV that you like a lot, that has a really well-designed, well-performing smart interface, I'd love to see that. Submit it to the subreddit. And if you'd like to take a video of it, maybe link that, techtalktoday.reddit.com. I'd love to see that. Just because I'm such a doubter. Maybe you could prove me wrong. Any content you want to add to the show, any stories, comments, any insights you want to share with us, any discussions you want to have with the community, techtalktoday.reddit.com. And I'll give a plug for our Patreon page over at patreon.com/today. Where we have 417 patrons now, and we've got some great ideas. We've been brainstorming a few things. I've got an open thread right now. I'm gonna start with that, and I want to see what you'd like to see about the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, sort of like behind the scenes questions you might have. I won't necessarily answer all of them, but the ones I'll answer, I'm gonna start doing soon. I got something kind of embarrassing to make the videos, so I think that arrived yesterday or today. And now I have the thing to make the videos. I'm going to explain what the thing is in one of the videos, but it's the most embarrassing thing I've ever bought. But once I have that, I can make these videos on a more regular basis. So we have an open thread. It's available to everyone over at patreon.com/today. You don't even have to be a patron to ask what you'd like to see behind the scenes. And then I will be posting Patreon exclusive videos to answer those. So patreon.com/today is where you go to fund the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. And this show is a thank you. That's why we have it on the Today page. To all 417 of you. You keep this show on the air and fund the Jupiter Broadcasting Network in a way that allows us to keep it a little commercial so we can have the sponsorships that we really, truly, truly like, but also have the flexibility to say no thank you anymore or turn down sponsorships, which does happen quite a bit. It's because of this model, this sort of split revenue model, too, that if one sponsor or two were to go away, your favorite podcasts don't go away. It's a great insurance policy that way, too. So it's at least how I think, probably how more and more podcast networks will go eventually. I think you're starting to see it now. There's a few that have. I think we're a little bit ahead of the curve because I think the sort of open source community background that I come from kind of, in my opinion, made me a little more open to the idea at first. But even the more traditional podcast networks have begun switching over because it really allows us to be responsible to the audience, turn down sponsors that aren't a good fit, and it's also just a great way to cultivate a community and give you guys a little buy-in to what we do. So that's patreon.com/today. Now, why did I go on that long ramble? Because this is the last episode of the week. I messed up. When I said I was moving to Tuesday to Friday, I didn't think about the fact that this Friday they're going to record 4 women's tech radios in a row, and they start early. So the studio won't even be available. So I didn't even think of that when I moved the show schedule. I apologize. So I will not be here tomorrow, but I will be here next Friday. So this is the last show for this week because I'm a spaz. It was totally my fault. So I apologize. I moved it. I should have waited 1 week, but dumb is what it was. But you know what? It's kind of a slow news week anyway, so I'll watch the news and I'll collect it like I was going to do a show, and then I'll just keep the best stuff for Tuesday's show next week. So don't worry. I won't let anything slip through the cracks. We'll just take the best of it, and we'll talk about it next week. So thank you guys for being here in the Mumble Room, being here this week. You guys are awesome. It was fun to get to episode 100, and now we're over the hump. I guess we have to wait to 200, or is it 1,000? I don't want to wait till 1,000. That's going to take too long. I think we should celebrate 200. I don't care.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right.
I like the idea.
All right. That's 2. That's 2 yays. That's all it takes, I guess. All right. So I don't even know if a lot of the audience, I hope a lot of the audience has heard of our next product, the one we're going to go out, the commercial we're going to go out with. I hope you've heard of this product, but it was like the first real attempt to bring the internet to the TV and make a smart TV. Obviously, the product bombed. I knew one family member that had it, and it was pretty awful. And you look back at it now and you think, this is kind of what they're trying to do now. It's kind of sad. And it's probably going to be just as successful. All right, everybody, thanks so much for doing this week's episode of Tech Talk Today. I'll see you right back here on Tuesday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, techtalktoday.reddit.com. In the meantime, thanks, everybody.
Make yourself comfortable. You are about to experience the next evolution in television. More choices, more control, more entertainment, all with Web TV Plus. Start with TV Home. As you change channels, you get the title and the time of the program you're watching so you know what's on, even during commercial breaks. And with TV Listings, you get a full day's programming schedule for your area. At any time, just push one button to watch your show full screen. Plus, now TV's even better because Web TV Plus introduces TV crossover links. Just click Click on the link to get more information on the World Wide Web about whatever you're watching. And Web TV Plus even adds the picture-in-picture feature to your television. Web TV Plus gives you fast, easy access to the internet. Explore, email, chat, shop, even check stats. All at a price you can afford. So, what do you think?
I'll take it. Don't wait. Call now for a free video and the Web TV Plus retailer nearest you. Web TV. Watch what's possible.